So, oh, there we go. There we go. So our theme again is lessons learned from returning to in-person programming. And so context for that, for the last 2.5 or several-ish years, a lot of us have been offering or participating in dementia-friendly programs in some form of virtual approach, whether live on Zoom or doing pre-recorded videos or other kinds of approaches. And so with the downswing in COVID the last several months, we've started to see a few organizations and programs offering things in person. And who knows how long that will last. I feel like we're all getting used to just like savoring it while we've got it. Could only be for another month. But anyway, we thought we would take advantage of what's happening now to try and learn from that experience of returning to in-person after years being virtual. And so we have several folks that are going to share for us about their experience, kind of how they've approached returning to in-person programs at this stage of the pandemic and any lessons learned. And we'll be hearing from, in order, we'll have Betsy Freeman, who's a program assistant with Dementia Support Northwest up in Bellingham, and she's going to talk about their program, the Breakfast Club. And then Peach Jack, who's a horticultural therapist here in the Seattle area, is going to talk about the Garden Discovery Walks program with Seattle Parks and Recreation and the UW Memory and Brain Wellness Center. And then Melinda Franklin and Karen Thompson with the Alzheimer's Association are going to talk about the Memory Loss Zoo Walk. So each of them will be talking just 6 to 8 minutes, and they'll describe their program super briefly. They'll discuss what changes, if any, they've made to their program since what it was like before COVID. They'll talk about what, if anything, was challenging about trying to restart in person and how they address the challenges, and what, if anything, helped their restart go smoothly, and lessons learned along the way. So a lot to cover in 6 to 8 minutes. And again, I'm encouraging you all to keep your own time so I don't have to awkwardly interrupt you on Zoom, which is very hard to do. So thank you for that. And we are going to start by turning it over to Betsy Freeman, again with Dementia Support Northwest. So welcome, Betsy.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I will start with the who, what, when, and where, but I'll do it kind of backwards. Who we are is the caregiver and their loved one. This is a group of people that have not met together before. It's a fairly new group, especially since COVID. And we as facilitators and as former caregiver myself felt it was necessary that we try to find something that we could do for these people. So we have what they have now named the Breakfast Club, and it's for both the caregiver and for their loved one. And we meet every Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We meet at Denny's. Denny's was absolutely terrific about it. They have a bar in their building, and they don't use the bar in the morning, so they have opened up the bar for us, and it's just for us. And we have our own waitress. The only thing they request is that we spend some money, of course. So, but you know what it's like to try and get a person with dementia up and going in the morning. So this is perfect because at 10 o'clock, they're ready for breakfast. So they come in, and Dennis has just been fabulous about it. And everybody meets and greets, and several of the people that are involved in that are also involved in our roundtable discussion group, which is we have a group of men that meet on Wednesdays, and they all have dementia. And so they've seen each other on the screen, but they have not seen each other in person until we had the Breakfast Club. And they just think that's great. There's no way in the world they would miss that. They just think it's terrific. But it's not just for people that belong to the caregiver group or to the dementia roundtable. It's for anybody that is in the area and that would like to bring their loved one to us. We met somebody a couple of weeks ago that they were in line to pay, and as they were paying, and it took forever, she turned around and said to us, "I'm so sorry, my husband has dementia." At that point, poor woman, we almost nabbed her and grabbed her back to the other part of the Denny's, but we did invite her to come. So far she has not, but I think she probably will. One of the ways that we tried to make this happen, was that we have a group of us that was part of my group for several years that have all been caregivers that have lost their spouses, but we still meet together. We still have coffee together. And we decided that that group would invite the new group to come with them because the new group didn't know that this works. They have not experienced meeting in person. So we met together with them for about 3 weeks, I think it was. And there were too many people. I mean, probably 30. So it was overwhelming for the place that we were at. So we split into 2 groups, but the current group had so much fun and realized that how important it was that they have continued. And so that's where we meet is Denny's at 10 o'clock on Mondays. And one of the gals decided it needed to be called the Breakfast Club. And when we had it on Monday, she ordered skinny pancakes. We said, skinny pancakes? I didn't know there were such things as skinny pancakes. She says, well, they're not, but psychologically for me, if I call them skinny, then they aren't so many calories. So, so that's what we're doing. The other thing that we do, I pass around a sheet where they put their name and their telephone number and their email on it in case something should happen, like somebody should come down with COVID and we need to notify everybody. But we also pass around a piece of paper that says, if you are ill, don't come. If you feel like you have COVID, if you've tested positive, don't come. So that goes around to everybody. This would be the 4th week that we've met, and we had 14 people there. So I feel it was very successful. And of course, the other group is also meeting, but in a different place.
Great. Thank you so much, Betsy. This is reminiscent of like a memory cafe or Alzheimer cafe type program that a number of us are familiar with, but also that weekly meeting frequency is interesting. And I loved hearing about the way you've returned and how great that Denny's has the perfect spot for you.
Oh, they've been so good about it.
Opened up the bar. It's really inspiring. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know a lot of people have wondered about how do we get back to doing like a memory cafe or Alzheimer cafe. So super helpful to hear from you. And I can imagine you'll probably get a few people reaching out for more information on how you went about it. So thank you so much. We'll go ahead and hear from all 3 programs, and then we'll have some time for questions right after that too. So next up, we're going to hear a little about the Garden Discovery Walk program, and Peach Jack, horticultural therapist, is going to share just a bit about that, and I'll also share a brief little intro. So welcome, Peach. And by way of introduction, this program, Garden Discovery Walks, goes back years before the pandemic, and it's a partnership with the Seattle Parks Department, which Tamara is here from them. Thanks, Tamara. And the UW Memory and Brain Wellness Center. And it's met once a month, first Friday of every month, typically had been for 2 hours at a time for people with memory loss and family members, and would take a tour of a local garden or park space, focusing on sensory experience, and then have a component of doing a nature-based horticultural therapy activity where people, again, are really engaging with nature. So really trying to tap into kind of connection with nature, connection with each other, and also some physical activity built into it as well. And we pivoted it into a virtual mode during the bulk of the pandemic, and just recently in the last 2 months have worked on bringing it back in person. So I'm going to turn it over to Peach to share just a little bit more about her observations of how we've been bringing it back, and anything that's been working well or anything that's been challenging. And I can fill in. And I mean, Tamara's here. She was maybe going to be on jury duty, but Tamara, if you want to add in anything, you can too. But Peach, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, well, you said a lot about the background, and thank you for that. During the time it was virtual, I was basically visiting the parks by myself or bringing someone along with me that was either from the memory care community, like Mary Grace came, or Genevieve. And I took pictures. We had a docent, and basically the way the garden walks worked was that we would usually have a presentation for the first half hour or so, depending upon, what the location was. It was always varied. Oftentimes it was a naturalist or somebody who had a lot of knowledge of the plant base that was at the specific park, like Kubota Gardens, or, just mostly parks in Seattle, but then I had the opportunity while I was filming or taking pictures to be able to expand my radius of where I was able to go. So some of you may have seen some of those films. And then, of course, like she said, we did a craft, some kind of a nature-based craft to hopefully people were able to then engage in some of those things on their own. I wasn't able to see any of the clients while they were doing that. So we were just all of us looking forward to being able to get back outside. And of course, you all know that the Memory Hub is now up and operational. We were just waiting for that to happen too. So I actually have been to one of the garden discovery walks. I didn't attend the last one. I myself was ill. I had COVID. And so I was at the tail end of it and thought maybe I should stay away. But as far as coming back to the programming, it's very different for us now to have it in one location because we're specifically focused now on what is growing in that garden that has been created. And kind of like what Pam Nolte was sharing about just really it being a sensory experience, it really engages. The whole idea behind the Garden Discovery Walk is really to engage all the senses, get your mind and your body involved in this whole thing. So doing it virtually was not, wasn't the best scenario, but we have a lot of herbs planted in the garden and so forth. So it's just made it, so we just have a place, it's a safe place and people can do that. But I think for anyone who wanted to do a Garden Discovery walk like we've done it before, it's entirely possible. And in many cases, there's always somebody that wants to talk about the garden that we visited. So that's usually the best part of it, is that it doesn't cost us anything. They're usually very excited to have us there. And the biggest challenge really has to do with finding level pathways and making sure that everybody's really safe while they're there. So we're just in a much more contained environment. But I would like to hear also from Tamara just for a minute, because she was there this last time when I wasn't, and the garden was planted at that point. So it's a different scenario since I've been there.
Thanks, Peach and Mary Grace. It's been so wonderful to be able to be with actual people again and to see the meaning of that for people, that to see people delight in their painting project, or to be able to touch a leaf and to smell it, to have those experiences and to have them next to somebody else. One thing that's really sort of stuck out to me, and I think part of that is that, as programs are, as more programs are happening, in the community generally, particularly that Parks and Rec is involved in, the first ones to come back have all been outside, and they've all involved being able to be physically mobile. And so this program, in its new incarnation, in a contained garden with a contained space, it really is shifting, to some extent, shifting both who is interested and also who we can serve now. So when I'm talking to people and having long conversations, introducing them and orienting them to dementia-friendly recreation, to the greater Dementia community, to partners and other offerings in the community, it's been nice to recently be able to sort of talk about it slightly differently. So the program is evolving and shifting, and we are learning and growing and developing the program in this new phase. And that's one of the things that has really stuck out the most to me. And it's nice that, for the person who previously wouldn't have been able to participate in this program, they now can have an experience in a garden, socially connecting with others, particularly right now when we've got limited things happening, or still lots happening virtually. Yeah. Thanks.
And thank you, Tamara. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just say yes to everything you said. And I think also looking back, just on kind of how it was. I guess there are some nuances around this program that are different just based on the fact that it now is in a new location from where it was pre-COVID. But just COVID wise, when we started in March, we did things like we did reduce the size of the group. We were all masking even out in the garden. We were checking vaccination status. We had prepackaged like snacks that were in wrappers rather than like a nice spread where people are kind of grabbing whatever. And was there anything else I was going to mention? Oh, I think there was just other thoughts around, where are we going to be eating? We need to be eating outside, and will people want to come inside where the activity is with their food? And kind of just thinking through all of that was a little bit more than what we would have done pre-COVID. So, alrighty. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that on garden discovery walks. And then thirdly, we are going to hear from Melinda Franklin, who is a long-term program volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association, and Karen Thompson, who's the manager of community support for the Alzheimer's Association. They're going to share about the return to the memory loss zoo walk.
Hi there, everyone. Betsy, where is it you meet for those skinny pancakes? It sounds so good. I am a volunteer, like Mary Grace said, in the memory loss community, and my favorite volunteering is at the zoo walk every Monday morning. We meet at the zoo to take a walk and meet in the cafe afterwards for some social time. So it's a social engagement program. And it's been going on since, I think, Mary Grace, 2010 maybe, I think.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I started in 2012, and in 2015 there were so many people, the waiting list was so long. We started a second one. My husband now leads that one. And now that we've started up again, both walks have not a long, but I think like 6 people on the waiting list again. So it's a very popular walk. Who does not love the zoo? One thing that helped was that we kept in touch with the people on the zoo walk throughout COVID. My husband and I held zoo Zooms and talked about animals and what was going on socially. We shared photographs. I don't know, anything that I could think of that would keep people engaged. We walk for, as I think I said, we walk for about 45 minutes, and then we go to the cafe for about 45 minutes as well. The Alzheimer's Association performs our screening because it is, initially it was an early stage walk. So you had to be early stage to start the walk. It's also sponsored by Seattle Parks and Rec and the Greenwood Senior Center. Care partners accompany the people with memory loss almost always. There have been a few people with memory loss that have been able to get to the zoo on their own and not wander and take care of themselves at the zoo. And that's fine. It's just not very often. What else did my notes say? There have been several changes since we restarted the walk. Probably the biggest change is we decided to have a middle stage walk, because what would happen is people would start out early stage, and then it would become such a group that as they went into mid stage, you just couldn't ask them to leave, because it was a community and everyone accepted everyone no matter what stage they were in. But they really had some different needs. The walk needed to be slower. We needed to have more volunteers to keep an eye on people, because the other thing that happens is the caregivers get to talking and comparing notes. And so a lot of the volunteers' role is to watch the people that have the memory loss and keep them engaged and watch the animals with them. So that goes back to the fact that we did not walk for 19 months. So when we got ready to start back up, a lot of people were not only not early stage anymore, they weren't middle stage anymore. And it's sad to say we lost a lot of people. they were either placed or passed away. So fortunately, we had the Alzheimer's Association and Karen, she re-interviewed everybody, and then she repapered everyone because there's some documents people have to sign to go on the walk. And Karen, I will let you talk about that. It was a lot of work. She did the most of the work to get started again. So I'll let you kind of talk about that,
Mary
Karen.
Grace, how much time do I have?
We're ahead of schedule, so if you
Okay.
want to,
Because it's like, I can talk really fast.
another 10 minutes, you're fine.
So the Alzheimer's Association for this particular program does screen people. We do a screening, and it's about 30 minutes, and we do a regular rescreening. One of the things that was really great working with Melinda and Barry was the fact that we were able to recognize the need to transition some of the people to a middle stage walk, and so we were able to put together this middle stage program. And so we, it was very interesting because we were under the auspices of the Alzheimer's Association, and so we were waiting for their direction on when we would return in person. And we obviously have done that twice now, because we did it last summer, which is when we got right busy and we created the second walk, and we made appointments. We talked to everybody. We talked to both, the couple both, and sent paperwork, got paperwork back. And so then we went back into person. It worked out really well. And then at Christmas time, the Alzheimer's Association said, no public, no in-person programs, stop. And so we had to pull back. So fortunately, there was already the Zoom, and so we were able to pull back. And so then the association told us we could resume in-person programs again, starting in April, based on state and local guidelines. And so that's what we've done. And fortunately, I'm only now at this point screening new people. And as Melinda says, we have quite the wait list. And so I'm also recruiting and interviewing and training volunteers to help support the program. And I don't know if we're going to get to a point where we need to start a third walk, because it is, and I think it's really fascinating and great that, it was a popular program, and now it's like everybody wants to do it. And it's great, because the more the merrier, and everybody has a good time. So yeah, it's a bit labor intensive, but it is so worth it. We just love this program. And Melinda and I sit around and stare at each other in strained silence with nothing to talk about. So it's been hard.
Another thing that we spent quite a bit of time on was what was the COVID protocol going to be, because there's the Fed, the state, the Alzheimer's Association, the zoo, everyone had all these protocols. And then on top of it, Barry and I did not want to go back and start leading the zoo walk without certain things taking place. But we all worked together. We, made sure we knew what other people were doing. And I'm very surprised almost everyone wears their mask all the time. Everyone is vaxxed and boosted, and I don't worry about it so much. The biggest problem are the people that wear hearing aids. And I'm sure some of you have experienced that. It's really hard for them to wear masks. But anyway, who doesn't like the zoo? It's wonderful. And like I said, it's the highlight of my week every week. And I'm so glad, we get to show and take people with memory loss around the zoo. They love it.
And of course, we have the advantage now that we have pivoted twice. So, everybody is just hoping upon hope that, we don't have to pivot again. But if we do, now we know what we're doing. So, it will be less of a challenge.
Well, thank you so much, Dream Team, Karen and Melinda. Thank you very much for sharing, and so glad that you're able to offer that program again. I can definitely remember how meaningful it was for folks way back in the beginning, and so glad it can be there. So thank you. We do have time for questions. So if people have a question for anybody that's just shared, you're welcome to type it into chat, or you can just raise your hand and be called on. So any questions? Karen, you have a question?
I do. So for the other two groups, like the Breakfast Club, for example, I mean, one of the things that we're looking at is, restarting like memory cafes and things like that. And my experience is somewhat limited. And so how do you manage, I mean, is it an early stage program? Do you manage a transition to a middle stage? I mean, it sounds like you kind of have a group that might be in both. How do you manage the transitions? Do you screen before people can join, that kind of thing? Does that make sense?
We do not screen, and anybody that, since they're with their caregivers, we don't worry about what stage they're in. They seem to enjoy it even if they aren't verbally participating.
Yeah, which I think is pretty typical of memory cafes or Alzheimer's cafes. And Garden Discovery Walk. Well, Tamara, where are you? You do registration for us. Do you want to say anything about maybe the conversation you have with people when you're bringing them into the program?
Sure. I speak to everyone, Karen. I wish it could be a half an hour. I tend to talk to people for 45 minutes to as much as an hour and a half. And it was resonating with me, you're talking about that aspect, because the restarting has been all of that all over again. So everyone, whether they've participated previously or not, I've been having conversations with. And I guess the other thing to your question, though, is that transition from one sort of place to another, in my experience, has always been a significant aspect of programming. There's a group that forms, there's social connections, and then people are in a different place. And there are, I think, lots of times accommodations made that one wouldn't enter the program in that place, but accommodations are made because they are a part of the group. And if you're a part of the group, then that can be maintained for longer, partly because lovely volunteers are, and care partners and everybody is willing to sort of support that a bit. But I think also it can get to a place where maybe the decision should have been made sooner. So I do think that's an ongoing issue, and it's great that you have been able to develop a walk that people can be referred to. You're not just out and not able to participate. It's just a different way.
Yeah. And if I may, the reason why we do differentiate is because I had shared with Melinda and Barry a recording that was made of a meeting made back in 2013 by the Alzheimer's Association with a person with dementia who attended a support group. And the point of the conversation was the importance of transition, because and this, of course, was a support group, not a social engagement program. But the part of the reason for the transition importance was because the person with dementia and their care partner are looking at their future, and it can be distressing to them. And the people who are more middle stage may need more care and time taken with them and that kind of thing. And so that's one of the reasons why I've been kind of mindful of, while there is a community, and it worked so well for the zoo walk because we were able to just transition more than one of them into the middle stage. And so that community was maintained somewhat. And we really, I think, have only actually interviewed anybody. And of course, when I say 30 minutes, that's the actual screening, but I've already talked to somebody on the phone for probably half an hour or two. So I know what you mean. But, we haven't actually brought anybody in to the zoo walk yet. I don't think that's middle stage, but it's coming because we do have people on the wait list. We just need more volunteer support. So So it was nice that there was already a community there for these people in middle stage, and that will now continue. But that's why I ask, is because, there was so much emphasis given on the importance of transitioning people when they needed to be transitioned. And so I'm kind of curious to know how people handle that.
Thank you. Carol, I see you have your hand up. Did you have a question? You want to go ahead and unmute?
I was wondering if anybody had a non-Alzheimer's Association protocol for transitioning. No comment.
Anybody? Pam, go ahead.
We have what the teachers see. It helps make it possible for us to have conversations afterwards. One of our students right now has very definitely moved into a middle stage. It's the joy of the Taproot class because, and this is the one that Taproot does itself at Taproot, currently still on Zoom. That community is very, very tight. Those players want to continue playing with the individuals that have been a part of that group for many, many years. So we make an effort. In fact, when the Taproot class started, because we were working more with different senior communities or senior centers, we saw that hardship of people progressing out of some of the programs that they were in. That's when the Taproot class at Taproot started, so that we could have something that had a wider range. One of our rules when we're teaching with that wider range, and really anytime we're in person, is we have to have 2 teachers. And that's a safety thing, but it also allows the lead teacher, whichever one of us is designated as lead that day, to continue being able to work with those that are at the earlier stage, and for the other teacher to come alongside. In person, that might be sitting next to that person, where you're giving more one-on-one attention in engaging that individual. So I think, every program has, but it is all human dependent. I'm hearing you, Karen. Every one of us probably has the ability to consider transitioning. It just means we have to welcome more people in as volunteers, or if you're in a paid situation like Taproot is for its teachers, be willing to say the price is worth it. Look for grants, look for donors, look for those other individuals that can help pay the price of the professionals that are involved. It is worth it to keep these communities and these individuals that are transitioning at their best for as long as we can. And every single one of these programs represented here is about keeping individuals who are experiencing memory loss at their highest potential for as long as we can. That's why we're all in this work. So
I totally agree with that.
More,
yeah.
I think we can all do it, but it takes a different level of effort.
And so I'm guessing that it's very subjective then for each situation, for whoever is leading the group and responsible for the group.
I think for those of us that are lucky enough to be involved with long-term classes, it becomes evident very quickly when someone, and we've all seen it during the pandemic, we're seeing them slip, unfortunately, when they might not have slipped as quickly. But I also know that one of our individuals that we were very concerned about, he had just transitioned to a memory care situation. Thankfully, his spouse was still with him. We thought, oh, this is going to be the end of our ability to work with him in the same way. He just needed some time. He just needed some time to adjust to his new living situation. And he's back firing on all cylinders, exactly the way that we would have hoped. But you got to give them a chance. That's what I'm going to
Absolutely.
say. You have got to give them a chance. If they've been through a living change, if they've suffered the death of a spouse or a child
Or a dog.
so many things. Absolutely a dog. Absolutely a dog. These all wreak havoc on those of us who aren't experiencing memory loss. So of course they wreak havoc on those who are in a more fragile place mentally.
When I
So
was in
give them a
Arizona,
chance. Give them a chance.
when I was in Arizona, the group we had caregivers and people with dementia. And I was with the people with dementia, but we only had one. And so one day, one of the people wandered out into the street. And one of the people in the group that was early stage said, somebody should go check on her. And so I had some pretty functional people in my group. And I said, okay, John, will you kind of take over while I go check on her? And that worked. But I like your idea of having two if you possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jump in, Melinda.
I just want to, I am just always blown away about the big smiles on people's face that are, middle stage as they approach the zoo. They know they're going to the zoo. I've had many caregivers say, John is always asking when zoo day is, when do we go to the zoo? And when you watch the people with memory loss, sometimes I think they enjoy the middle stage, enjoy the animals and what they're seeing. It brings them more joy than the rest of us. Mm-hmm. So, it's really taught me not to underestimate the power of social engagement for people in mid and late stage. It's truly amazing.
Yeah, and I will say that was one of the reasons why we worked together on this, because I went to Melinda and Barry and I said, I don't want to kick these people off the island. How can we continue to help them? And so that's sort of my goal with all of the programs that we put together is
I was wondering about that.
Be able to transition into some kind of, and of course, like you say, memory cafes are a great resource for that. And I have questions about that, but not for this particular situation. But yes, I totally agree. I don't want to kick them off the island. And, I believe that, at some point they sort of self-select off, because they lose interest or they don't have enough gas in the tank left or whatever. But it's like, I don't want to fire people if I don't have to. So, that's part of my goal is to make all of these kind of two-pronged sort of things so that there's always something that they're capable of doing.
My
like
end
you say,
of the
to
line,
their highest capacity. I'm sorry, go ahead.
My end of the line was safety. There came a time when, I felt someone was a fall risk, or they were too slow. There was just, we ended up having one volunteer with them the whole time, in a huge, space in between it was them and then the rest of the walkers. Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and transition into our small group discussion now, but thank you so much to everyone who shared and those great questions and answers. I really appreciate hearing from those of us who are beginning that we're good trying things in person again and being able to learn from each other. We're going to break into groups again of 3 or 4 people, and we'll invite you to reflect on a couple questions. First is just what stood out to you from this sharing time about lessons learned returning to in-person programs. What stood out to you? And then additionally, what have been your experiences so far with any in-person programming during the pandemic? If you've had any experience with that, and/or what kind of in-person programs might you like to explore? So any experience you've had or anything you're kind of thinking about with in-person programming. And Allison, if you can create the groups and then bring us back at let's do 4:10 to give us 15 minutes. Thank you.